they'll be able to show me where it's missing on half my knee. By June, I'll have a full cartridge, and the pain will be gone, and I'll have full function, the same as I did in 1975 before I injured it.
Now, here's what happened. The intranasal would be the equivalent of the brain. I noticed my ability to concentrate, focus, and I would say my general mental capacity increased dramatically. I've been more excited to be alive and learn than ever before. Since I was 14 years old and learned to code.
And I'm totally convinced that in 10 years, my testing will show that I'm biologically younger than I am today. Right now, I'm biologically around 65, according to the various tests. And I think that by the time I'm 90, I'll have it down to 50. And I'll have the means to keep it there at 50.
All right, so one of our favorite topics here on Capability Amplifier is, of course, medicine. And specifically, we love longevity. And one of the things that Dan and I really are interested in right now is anything we can do to increase our mindset longevity, our body longevity. And you just came back from an unusual trip internationally. So why don't you just give us an update on what's going on and what was that trip, Dan?
Actually, 2 trips to Buenos Aires, Argentina. First week in November, and then another one just the week before Christmas. And it's a long trip. We flew. Usually, you fly to Atlanta. It's Delta all the way from Toronto. And so it's 2 hours to an hour and a half, close to 2 hours to Atlanta, and then you got another 9 hours to Buenos Aires. Uh-huh. And just an interesting thing, you think South America is south of North America. All of South America is east of Columbus, Ohio. If you take Columbus, Ohio, and draw a straight line, I mean, it really, really slants towards Africa, South America does. Well, Argentina is right at the bottom of South America. Yep. Actually, the closest place may be Antarctica. And, it's
a big country.
Yeah, but the reason why we go there is that, we've been at this for about 35 years, Babs and I. We're looking at anything that repairs what's wrong with you, and we're looking at anything that rejuvenates what you already have. And so, this is through our great connection with Richard Rossi, who we both know really well. And Richard has a really great mastermind group on regenerative medicine, which we were very pleased to have you there last time, Mike. I don't know if you're at the next one.
I'm planning on it.
Okay, we'll see you there. Yep. Well, the doctor we went to see is going to be talking at the January meeting when we go to Scottsdale.
Oh, yeah.
Dr. Movilia, and 70-year-old, 72, I think. And he's been working on something for about probably 30 years. That then coincided. He was going in a particular direction, already doing sort of groundbreaking work. And then the stem cell revolution happened about a dozen years ago, where you can take parts of your own human body, your own cells, and through a process, they can be transformed into any other cell in your body. Mm-hmm. So the main one I was interested was cartilage. And because I have an injury that goes back 40 plus years, and didn't bother me for the longest time, but the last 10 years, going downstairs bothers me. Exercise impact, hiking, anything downhill is painful, And what happens is that the knee area gets inflamed, and it doesn't really go down. So I met this doctor a year ago at Richard's mastermind group, Da Vinci 50, and we had 3 days. He was there for 3 days, and I just chatted with him about my cartilage, and he says, "Well, that's pretty basic stuff for us as cartilage." And so, we had to go through. You have to go through an American doctor to get you're okay to do this, and so we tried different people, but then we went through David Hasse, who's a longtime friend of yours and a longtime client of yours, and he's our main medical center now in the world. It's in Nashville, Maxwell Clinic, and I can't say enough of how good David and Lindsay and their team is. It's
Amazing human beings. Yep.
Best medical care I ever received in North America. And so, long story short, we had our cells removed, and it's fat cells and white blood cells, and they send it through various to Argentina, and it gets there, and then it takes them about 4 weeks to see whether this will do the trick. And it did. It was good. And so finally, first week of November, Babs and I, our schedule freed up, and we were able to make the trip. And I have to tell you, any place where I've been for a solid week, it was 5 days. The first trip, it was 5 days. I've never seen such attentive medical care. His daughter, Dr. Mobilia's daughter, Teresita, is she runs the clinic. He runs the lab, and she just has a way of articulating. So now this is what we're going to do next, and this is why we're doing it, and this is why we have to do this first, and why I have to do second, third. It's like this constant, this constant tour guide who's telling you, giving you the 360-degree explanation of everything that you're doing. But the interesting thing wasn't so much what we experienced there, but while we were there, we were in a lobby area. It's quite a lengthy room, and they had paraplegics there. They had about 5 of them the first time I was down there, and we saw 6 of them. And these are people who completely lost the to feel anything below their waist. They simply can't walk, and they don't have any feeling below their waist. And one of them was very interesting. This guy named Jesse Malin from New York City. It was an article about him in Rolling Stone, and he a musician, and he had a spinal stroke. I've never heard of that before, but it's like a stroke, but it's in your spinal column. And
never heard of it either. Yeah.
Immediately he was paralyzed from the waist on down. So when we got there in November, first week of November, he was there, and they had him on standing up. They had to help him stand up. And then you had 2 therapists, one in front of him and one behind him. And he had a walker on wheels, the walker, you hold on to it with your arms and your arms and hand. And they were helping him step by step, where one pusher would push the foot and the other push. And all they're doing is, he's already had stem cell treatment, but now they've got to wake up the nerves, and they have to train the nerves again to do what they're doing, because the stroke put them out of commission. So it was very arduous. You could tell it was a lot of work on his part. And he did that, and we watched him. But over the 5 days in November, we saw that he made progress. Okay. So fast forward. We're there 5 weeks later, and it's the week before Christmas. And he's there, and he hadn't been away. He had been there for 3 months, working day by day. And now he still needed the walker, but he could walk all the way down and walk all the way up. And they said that by September, he'll walk unaided. Okay.
Unbelievable.
And then I talked to them about the paraplegics, and they have 13 in the clinic right now. And she says, generally speaking, we can get paraplegics to walk in 1 year. And that's through the stem cells. That's through the use of the stem cells plus extensive therapy. And they have a quadriplegic in who can't move at all. She can move maybe her hands. And she says within 3 years, we'll have her sitting up and talking. She can barely talk right now because it affected that. And so, it's not instant. It's not instantaneous like the Bible. It's it's not instantaneous. But I told him, I said, if you really want to make history, doctor, have somebody die and bring them back on the third day. I said, I have to tell you that you'll make your mark. And he laughed. He laughed. He said, no, not going there. Not going there. Anyway, but just to bring it back to Babs and me, and Babs is there she's got a very inflamed toe that's chronic, and it's been that way for 2 or 3 years. And it's a bone inflammation, which is really, really tough. Plus the cartilage has been degraded. And mine is the cartilage. And but they said, while you're here, we're doing repair work, but why don't we do some rejuvenation work? So rejuvenation, there's nothing particularly wrong with you, but we can enhance what you're doing. Repair is something is wrong, and we're going to bring it back to its original shape. And so they gave me brain cells to the stem cells to the brain. These are still the same stem cells. And the other one is vascular system. Okay. And that's done with an IV. The knee is done with a straight injection. Okay. So this time I went back and they gave me another one in the knee, and it takes a while for you to see actual progress because you're regrowing cartilage, and it doesn't regrow fast. And so, but they'll be able to show me where it's missing on half my knee. By June, I'll have full cartilage, and the pain will be gone, and I'll have full function. The same as I did in 1975 before I injured it. And I can go into a lot of detail about the second trip and everything, but I want to say I've come back with a total belief that anything that's wrong with you is either repairable or it's you can rejuvenate it right now. I'm hands down, if you have a reason to do that. Which I know you do, and which I know I do.
Yes. Okay. Well, I've got a whole bunch of questions, and I'm going to put on my listener viewer hat here, because the kind of questions that I'd be asking right now, some of which I know the answer for, is, all right, so first of all, these are not embryonic stem cells. These are actually cells coming from your own body. Yeah. And the verdict is pretty well in now that sooner or later the body will reject anything that comes from outside. Okay.
They pretty well. Dr. Mavilia said, he says we've got a long history now and he says either they don't work or they actually cause problems. They cause problems that you didn't want to have.
Yeah.
So I mean, I'm simply giving it to him who's in the business, and
yes.
Yeah. So
right. So the net is these are your own cells.
Yeah.
They're cultured.
In my case, it's fat cells and blood and white blood cells.
Right. And from the time you have donated these until they're cultivated and then put back in you, what is necessary for that? And then, when you and I were together, I don't know how many weeks ago, we were at Genius Network together. I had said, hey, have you noticed anything yet? And I don't think you had noticed anything that you could definitively say, yes, I feel different. But have you noticed any shift or change? Or do you believe there's something yet? I'm just curious what
the outside reference point, and I've got two of them. One of them is a biofeedback clinic that I go to couple of times a month. I've done 33 sessions in a year and a half here in Toronto, and it's to redirect my brain. And brains can get off track, and we know that because it's part of our resume.
Not yours though. Other people I know it happens to, but not Dan Sullivan's, not the great old Dan Sullivan. But okay.
Yeah.
So
But I have corrections to make to my brain, how my brain functions. And anyway, the progress in my biofeedback sessions since I came back from the first trip have been remarkable. And as a matter of fact, they're wondering how it happened because I think I've described maybe perhaps on a previous podcast. What you do, you just go into a room in a clinic and you have a technician and they put sensors on your brain. Okay. There's 19 of them. And it's kind of like a net, a hair net, and with a, you don't have to put any goop on your head. It's just it just fits on your head. And then they can see that all the connections are made on the screen. And then you can bring a movie along. So I'm using Foyle's War, a British homicide detective story from 15 years ago. Great series, but it's about 8 hours, 9 hours, and it's great. And then what you do is you watch it, and up until these recent experiences, after coming back from Buenos Aires, the screen, I would be watching the movie, and then all of a sudden the screen would go dark, and the sound would go off. And there's nothing you can do about it, but the brain will readjust because it likes the stimulation of the screen. And it was wandering, the brain was wandering, and then it cut off the movie, cut off. And so the brain responds to it. And normally, Mike, it would happen 4 or 5 times in a 40-minute period. And then if it started going down to 1 or 2 times, they would up the difficulty. And then you'd be back up to 4 or 5 the next time. Okay. And that's the way it went for the first 30 sessions before I went to Argentina. First time I came back from Argentina, I was watching it. And for 40 minutes, it didn't go dark and the sound didn't go off. And the technicians who are screened for being non-expressive and giving you no feedback, we got finished, and she's from Hong Kong, and she said, that was fantastic. She says, I've never seen that before. I've never seen anybody go through the 40 minutes. She said, I'm going to have to up the difficulty. So she upped the difficulty. Next time I did 40 minutes, no dark out, no loss of sound. She said, I'm going to have to increase the difficulty. Did it again. So what it means, so David Hasse explained that there's been a new increase of blood flow to the brain.
So
he said you didn't learn anything.
Evidence of a vascularity shift, and yeah.
He says you didn't learn anything new. You didn't become more skillful. It's just that your brain is able to handle the situation. And so I went back. Then I went to Buenos Aires again. I came back, and last Saturday I was there again and again. 40 minutes of. So they're having discussions about what to do. And David Hasse found that remarkable. And the doctor, the Teresita, the doctor, she said, that's amazing. She said, you're kind of unique because if you watch, if you talk to you, you don't really have anything wrong with you. Okay. I mean, she says most of the people who come here, they can't walk, they can't do this and everything else. She said, you're kind of unusual for our client base, but I gave them a dozen copies of My Plan for Living to 156. And then I had to sign. I don't know if any of them can read it because they're Spanish speaking, but yeah. And she quizzed me for about 45 minutes. She says, what prompted you to write this book? And I said, I wanted more time. I I wanted more time.
With just a stroke of a pen, you can double your lifespan. That's a great idea.
I'll tell you a
It's
little
all about
story.
framing. Yeah.
I'll tell you a statistical story about that John Bowen just revealed to us yesterday. But anyway, so that's it. And then I go to an osteopath. Okay, and so after the first trip, between the two sessions in Argentina, my osteopath, Andy, said, it's a she. She said, she says, the inflammation's going down in your knee. So I've been working with her for about 6 months before Argentina, and, probably 10 sessions. And she said, there's been a real drop in inflammation. So I was there again this morning, and this is just the time back. And she said, oh, yeah, she says the inflammation's going way down. And she says it's much more pliable around the knee. So I would say that's probably evidence that the stem cells are starting to change things.
It's remarkable. So from the time you had your first treatment and then your second treatment, and now, how many months have gone by? Again, just so we've got some relative time here.
So we're first week of January now. So it was the first week of November. So it's 2 months. 2 months. And then we'll be back down the first week in February. We'll be back down. And then the end of March, and then June. And we have 5 sessions. But next time she's going to work, I have 2 broken Achilles tendons patched back together, also from the 70s. It was a bad decade. The 1970s sucked, basically sucked. And anyway, but she said, you can't really repair tendons. She says, there's nothing you can do with tendons. But she said they're calcified. And she said the surgeries that they did back then, they wouldn't do it this way. How they got you back on your feet, they wouldn't do it this way. But she says, what we notice for people who have long time Achilles tendon injuries, that there's a lot of calcification, and we can insert stem cells and they'll eliminate all the calcification. And she says it'll actually give you more stability. And she says, I think a lot of the pain in your knee is coming because of the inflexibility of your Achilles tendon. So, but I go along, and it's all guesses and bets, Mike.
Right. Well, I have a couple additional observations. So first of all, maybe before that. So one thing I notice in you, for years, you cleared your throat constantly. And I don't know if that's something recent or could be related, because I know one of the things that very frequently happens with proper stem cell treatments are other little things go away. And is there any relationship by any chance with that? Or is there something else that you've done? But I mean, you've cleared your throat for years, like pretty continually.
No, well, I just did too.
Yeah. Oh, just now I know. But I mean, the whole podcast before, I haven't noticed it. So that's I was wondering.
Yeah. Well, I haven't, I don't know. I mean, you're just drawing my attention to it for the first time. Other people said, you notice how much Dan clears his throat? And there's thousands of people know it's on the social media, but this is the first time I've heard of it.
Okay. Well, there you go. I didn't bring it up because it was just like, something's going on, but there you go. Yeah. Now you're going to really jack with me. Now,
you notice Dan, one of his foot is backwards,
Do you ever notice?
I wonder how he ties his shoes,
Right. Yeah. Well, he, where most people put it on top, he puts it underneath. So I had one other thing to add, which was, when you said that the 70s were a really terrible decade, that's the problem with disco. There were so many injuries that took place then, both to our souls and to our brains, and then to our bodies as well.
Well, I don't have that excuse.
Yeah. Well, I'm just giving you a hard time. But here is, I don't know if you're able to, but can you give folks a sense of what the investment is for a year's worth of treatments for something like this. Is this something you're able to share? Again, I don't want to step on the business.
Here's the problem with it. There's such an inequality between the US dollar and Argentina that to explain this in any terms, for example, I had 2 MRIs the first week. And this is in pesos. This is in Argentine pesos. And the first one was $66 US, and the other one was $71 US. Since then, they had an election between our first trip and our second trip. They had an election, and the new president devalued the currency a further 50%. So I suspect that an MRI 2 weeks ago when we were in Argentina would be $33.
Hey, Action Taker, Mike Koenigs here, and I just wanted to interrupt for a second and let you know that if you're ready to reinvent yourself and your business, go to connect2mike.com to learn more and book a conversation with me right now. All right, back to the episode.
So to talk about, to talk about how much it costs is unique to the situation.
So we can say it's very affordable.
Well, it's affordable right now, and you pay here in US dollars, and they keep the US dollars in the United States. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So we can't exactly answer that question. Yeah.
No, it's but David Hasse said that probably what we're doing this year is probably $250,000. With the 5 treatments, probably anywhere else, it's probably a quarter million. Okay. And which we've paid for other things. I mean, Babs and I have written, this is not covered by your Blue Cross. This is not covered by your Canadian government healthcare system, and I often laugh people. They say, well, what's the healthcare system in Canada like? Because we're in Chicago too, and we have Blue Cross in Chicago. And I said, well, it's a 2-tier system. And they said, 2-tier? I thought it was just a government system. I said, that's tier number 1. What's tier number 2? I said, it's Air Canada to Las Vegas, Air Canada to Tucson, Air Canada to Miami. And they laugh and they laugh. I said, if they didn't have tier 2, the government couldn't afford tier 1, because anyone with money, anybody who can write the check, you don't try to get the health care in Canada. Okay.
Yeah. No, it is. And
now I've got a 3rd tier, and it's Delta Air Canada will fly me on my 5th trip. We can fly by Air Canada to Buenos Aires. Yeah. But it's a country going through tremendous change right now. And, the president came in probably a month ago, the new president, and he immediately eliminated 9 government ministries.
Yeah, it's
he's changing 350 economic regulations, and the reason is that they were just going down the toilet bowl if something didn't happen.
Yeah. It's been a long time coming for sure. And I know Peter Zion talks about Argentina quite a bit and the possibility and potential.
Well, he's very up about their future if they ever got their act together.
Yep, yeah. Exactly. No, yeah. I think that's
It's Mike, what do you make of this? Because I know you're a curious lad.
Yes.
I think you're a curious person, and you've done a lot of stuff yourself that's
I have
not on the official map.
Yes. So I'll talk about everything that I can talk about, because going back almost 10 years now, shortly after I had cancer, I had a pretty significant shoulder injury that was caused by working out too much, boxing, but it was like definitely a rotator cuff, and something had happened to my labrum. And what I did is, at the time, I did a treatment using my own bone marrow. So I donated my own, they spun it up, And I had, in about 4 or 5 months, the pain went away. And before that, I could count somewhere between like 9 to 11 pops every time I'd raise my arm. And I could not sleep on my left side if I laid with my arm up. So that was the first significant treatment I ever did. And sometime later, I did another treatment. And it was done a different way. So it was using fat, my own fat cells versus bone marrow. And then after that, I shifted and recently started doing, so I did some intranasal and a bunch of other umbilical cords. So these are obviously not my own. And I know exactly what you said. And I've talked to some other docs about it, but I noticed a couple things. One of them is by 10 years later, I started noticing pain again in my shoulder, also some pain in my knee, and also in my lower back and upper neck, which pretty typical. Anyone who sits on their butt as much as we do. And men especially start noticing that. So I've done 3 treatments now. One about a year ago, one again, another, I don't know, say 6 months ago, and one 3 months ago. Now, here's what happened. The intranasal would be the equivalent of the brain. And I noticed my ability to concentrate, focus, and I would say my general mental capacity increased dramatically. Now, if I were going to tie that to one other thing, this was a year of AI, and I got so interested in learning, and it was as though I learned a new language. It could have been, if it weren't that, then it was just, I've been more excited to be alive and learn than ever before. Since I was 14 years old and learned to code. But I am currently physically pain-free. The only time I feel any pain is if I run more than 4 miles in my knee, which is going back to an injury from when I was 19 years old, a running injury. And I know something's jacked up down there, and it's probably like yours, accumulated scar tissue or calcification or something like that, this just wouldn't do. And then Vivian has also done a similar thing. So as long as I've known her, she's had pain in her hips and a couple other places, and she's pain-free for the first time in almost 25 years that we've been together. And then her mother, who is 92 years old, did 2 things recently. One related to stem cells. So she got the full treatment, couple doses. She's been in lots of pain, again, as long as I've known her and her mom. She's in none right now, 92 years old, still lives by herself in Queens, New York. And she also started doing semaglutide, which is considered by many people pretty miraculous medicine right now. It's a peptide. And the benefits of that is you lose weight. She lost 25 pounds and she's kept it off without having to continue this. So one of the things that these, I think they're GLP agonists. I think that's what they're called. Basically, you look up whatever the weight loss peptides are. They're also known as Ozempic. There's trizepatide is another one. The key thing that they do is they rewire the brain, and it reduces cravings, but also lowers sugar. And if there ever were a miracle substance right now that could literally start reducing diabetes, reduce cravings, in other words, shift behavior, these are on the list of what most peptide and other integrative docs would say are, even though this technology has been around a while, very breakthrough. So again, based on what you've been talking about, I'm really, really interested in shifting to donating my own cells instead of putting something external in my body, because I've always thought, something about this doesn't feel right, even though I've done now, let's call it 3 variations. Again, bone marrow, fat, and external. Yeah. Yes, those 2 were my own. And I'm a huge proponent, of course, in this country. our FDA, which I think some of the time is operating in our best interest, which is to prevent bad experimental grifters from screwing us and killing us. At the same time, they're guilty of grift as well, and are preventing.
They're a big bureaucracy, you know.
Yeah, and I think there's
Yeah.
strong evidence suggesting there is a lot of internal corruption that's enabling some of the folks on top to steal money or create monopolistic behavior that is non-beneficial to our medical system. How's that for a patty cake?
Yeah. Well, Dr. Movilia, you know, said that he's had nothing but good experiences with the FDA, and he said he found them remarkably.
Yes. So I'm speaking out of my rear end. I'll say that, which is I would suspect that it all comes down to creating positive relationships with real people and not trying to manipulate a situation and be a son of a bitch. You know, it's like, and it's like anything, you know, that in government, that is a hard place to be, especially if you're buried in bureaucracy. So on one hand, how dare I crap on the system and crap on the people? It's again, the bureaucracy that scares me. It's not the people so much.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, the entire industry of medicine and, you know, is just going through a tsunami of change. And, you know, and I think that they're cautious. They're very, very cautious now. You know, on the good side, I think they're cautious. You know, and I worked out a graph once of technological breakthroughs, and I said, you know, every technological breakthrough has an interesting, you know, if you're a year into it or 2 or 3 years into it, there's about 20% of it that's real, and there's about 30% they're getting you to bet on the bet. They're not asking you to bet on the new thing. They're asking you to bet on the bet. You know, so you get an early return. It's and then there's about another half of the remaining half is hype and scam of some sort, and it's not a scam in the sense that it hurts you. It's a scam that it just doesn't work. You know, you would spend money, and then about the remaining quarter is actually criminal activity.
Yes. Yeah.
And I said, you know, you got to use a lot of common sense here. I mean, I remember Warren Buffett never voted. He never bet on any stock. Except I think he was in his late 80s. He finally bet on Apple, you know, and he said, I don't invest in things I don't understand. I've just never really understood it. He says, not their fault. It's just that cornfields in Nebraska, you know, 5,000 acres of cornfields in Nebraska, I know what I'm getting. He says, you know, I know what the history is. I know how to think about these things. Yeah, and So my attitude is that for example, I'll give you some very, very safe investments. Whole life insurance, you know, which is cash value life insurance, whole life. We've had our policies for probably 30 years. And the cash value started paying for the insurance about 10 years into them. You know, they were doing, and so it was making, and we've averaged 7% return on, you know, the cash value. And now it's like our own bank. It's creditor proof. It's tax proof. It's sitting there. So my attitude is, and I'm not going into all of our other investments here, but my whole investment is that I'll do risk taking with the company I own. And, you know, if you're adventurous and you're creative, there's got to be some part of your life that's really stable and steady. You know, so I said, I'm not going to be worried at night about investing in things I don't. I understand real estate. I understand, life insurance. I understand, but the real bets are on the company. We'll take risks there. And by the way, we've got 9 patents back so far this year.
It's extraordinary. I get to tell that story all the time. I talk about what you're up to and what you're doing and how it's not about the patent and the trademark as much as what you can do with it as a financial instrument. It's the non-obvious.
It's an asset. It's an asset, and they're sailing through it. The other thing that I learned and here for the listeners and watchers, we're talking about Keegan Caldwell, who's a Free Zone member with Mike and me, and he's got such a totally different approach to intellectual property law, and but his big thing that even when you get a patent rejected, so we've had 2 rejections, outright rejections. They say, forget us, go away. You can reconfigure it and place it under one of your existing patents, and you get it's called an attachment. It's called an attachment.
Yep.
And it has, the moment you attach it, it has the full value of the patent, and it's considered part of the patent structure. So in essence, there are no rejections in it. So that's off topic. We're talking about, but we're talking about this, and my sense is that this is going to be the huge growth industry in the United States, primarily in the United States, and then other places in the world. And the industry I'm talking about is regenerative and rejuvenation of medicine, because there's only been 2 technologies that I've really seen continually grow over the last 10, 12 years. And one of them is AI, which is now democratized. So any individual has access to AI. And the other one is regenerative medicine. And the 2 are actually spurring each other on, the 2 of them.
Yes.
And there's just a lot of industries that are hitting a wall now. There's a venture winter out there. There's a lot of money, but it's not being invested. People are uncertain where to put their money right now, but everybody's putting their money into AI and regenerative medicine.
Yeah. No, there's so many fortunes and so many disruptive opportunities. And I would also say, computing power, which is related to AI, and energy. But even that is an AI stack, meaning the progress we're going to see is because of AI. But
I just finished my melt book today, my meltdown book. So we just finished off, and I have a whole chapter on AI. That AI is the technology that's going to be used to lower melt costs, lower the cost of money, lower the cost of energy, lower the cost of labor, and lower the cost of transformation. And who knows who will be doing it.
Yeah. No,
so I don't see the industry really consolidating. Do you see the industry consolidating?
I do. I think it's inevitable. And again, it's going to come down to not as much about computing power, but about the applied stack of wisdom and knowledge. So if you take a look at
it'll be more in the interface area.
Yeah. So, and I think that's what I want to tackle when we do our predictions episode, which is coming up, because I think this is a good transition point to where I wanted to ask you. I think what all of the listener viewers would be asking right now, which would be, okay, if I came to Dan Sullivan based upon his experience, his projection on what he thinks is going to happen, and how to approach this, for someone who's looking at rejuvenation and regeneration, what's your non-doctor, non-prescription prescription, if you're going to provide some advice or recommendations, or even if it was just a mindset right now?
Yeah, well, I think that the big thing that there, and this is another breakthrough, and it's because of AI, is testing. Start getting yourself to a clinic that just has fabulously cutting edge testing, because what can be anticipated now, uh, um, 6 months ahead, a year ahead, 2 years ahead, was not possible 5 years ago. Wasn't possible 5 years ago. So my sense is it doesn't start with any particular therapy right away, but actually get a scorecard of what's working and what's not working. And I find David Hasse is just one of the most. And I mean, he's choosy about who he takes on, but
Yep. We'll put his contact info in the show notes for sure.
And he came to Maxwell Clinic in Nashville is just, Babs and I have been investing for 35 years. And I would say half of our investment money was wasted money in the sense that it didn't go anywhere. But I told David and Lindsay on my last call with them that I think I've found a home in Maxwell Clinic, that anything I need to know that other people are doing, I can go through David to get to the other people, like the clinic in Argentina.
So the Joe Polish of regeneration, perhaps.
Yeah. Yep. But I am convinced, totally, just going on, I'll be 80 in May, and I'm totally convinced that in 10 years, my testing will show that I'm biologically younger than I am today. Right now, I'm biologically around 65, according to the various tests. And I think that by the time I'm 90, I'll have it down to 50. And I'll have the means to keep it there at 50.
Yeah. So it begins then with start testing the scorecard, associate yourself with a clinic and some people you can trust, and start experimenting. And you're gonna have to put your toe in the water. And maybe the place to begin is what's causing you the greatest amount of discomfort and pain. In your case, I think what I would say is, and this is where my focus is cognition and mobility should be your first two areas, because if your mobility is going down, you're screwed. And I would add, I just spent the past 5 days with JJ Virgin and her husband, Tim. And they're also coach members. They're back in the game. But JJ is spending all of her focus and energy right now on muscle and protein intake. Now she is 60, I think, 2-ish. Her husband's in the same area. He's actually 59, Tim. And they are ripped. You would not believe, like, JJ's just put on a ton of muscle. And we went hiking, and her whole deal right now is, it's about balance and muscle and mobility. And everything follows exercise. And
I would say cardio, because it's oxygen to the brain, which really affects cognitive. That actually, aerobic exercise actually contributes most to your the offset of dementia or cognitive decline. It's actually the amount of oxygen you can get to the brain. Okay. Yep.
And if you're in pain, you're not going to do any of this stuff. And I'll tell you, I had a giant wake up call, and then we'll head towards our wrap up here. But about a couple months ago, I got a new device and I was working out with it. Felt fine. I worked myself to failure. And the next morning I woke up. It was right before we left to another location in Mexico. And my whole right side of my brain was in 10 out of 10 pain. I couldn't move my neck. And like everything hurt, sitting hurt, driving hurt, everything hurt. And I went through and did a bunch of massage. I did a bunch of physical therapy. The only thing that made a difference was acupuncture. And I didn't realize until I always, I've done lots of acupuncture, but I didn't understand really what's going on is when you're putting that needle into a muscle, it can stop the spasming and actually have a release. And then if they apply some TENS probes to it, it'll stimulate it and release any more. And it was like, I experienced like, let's say 15 to 20% decline after one treatment, another 15 to 20% after another. By the time I had my third, with a little bit of time, I had gone down to maybe 20%. But even that, it was like sleeping hurt. Nothing felt good. And I was like, I cannot wait until I'm in the state of mind of feeling pain-free again, and appreciating that even more, because that is the biggest thing that I'm terrified of as I age is being in a state of pain and not being able to move, because I couldn't get on my bike. I just couldn't do anything. And I'd lay around and I'd literally run out of energy by like 3:30 in the afternoon. I was beat because pain takes so much energy from you. And so I think as we look at this,
And tequila treatment didn't do any good either, right?
No, that's the problem is you can take all the pain meds you want. There's certain kinds of pain cannot be masked. And you know me, I love a shot or three of tequila, but man, it did not help. And all I'd wind up with is a really bad habit in 3 months. So anyway, it's good to be back and feel good again. And I can't wait until we dig into our predictions episode, which is coming up next.
I'd like to do that. And then English as a second language.
It is. So let's wrap this one up. Do you want to do the first wrap up and I'll do the second?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I hope everybody enjoyed our little side trip into Argentina and the medical help. And I would say this, that you can't go, we're not even going to give the name of the clinic because they're not in the business of accepting, they're a research lab and clinic, and they have a pipeline to the United States, which is Maxwell Clinic in Nashville. So if you wanted to start the journey there, you would have to start with Maxwell. And Dr. Movilia is also on the faculty of Wake Forest in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. So they have a huge research center there for regenerative medicine. So he's there. And Mike, I learn more about my trips when I do a podcast with you, because you ask me all sorts of questions and that. But I'm totally sold, and I don't really have any alternative, do I?
No. Well, the good news is this is the kind of rigor and vigor and mindset shifts we both need to keep each other accountable, and also being able to support the people who are supporting us, I think is one of the best gifts we can give them, and also keeping our toe in the game. So I'm double sold after this. And I'm going to reach out to David after we're done with our episode recordings today.
Yeah.
So, this is another successful episode of Capability Amplifier. Make sure, first of all, you check out the notes and give this thing 5 stars. Share it with some friends and family, especially people you know who need to be rejuvenated, regenerated, and are looking for more mobility and a longer, happier, healthier, more joyful life. All right, that's it. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening.